My parents demanded my $50,000 savings for my sister's luxury condo. I used it to save our collapsing family cabin instead. Dad threw my things on the curb and said, then go rot in it. Now they need a key. The air in the old cabin tasted of time. It was a complex flavor, a base note of damp earth and decaying wood, layered with the sharper scent of pine needles that had drifted in through a crack in the window pane, and a top note of dust, thick and undisturbed for years. I ran a hand over the rough-hewn mantle of the stone fireplace, my fingers tracing the initials carved deep into the wood, GM plus LM. Great Uncle George and me, Leo Mason. He'd carved them himself one summer when I was 10, his big, calloused hands steadying mine as I struggled with the knife. This place was more than a junk house, more than the pile of rotting wood my father had called it. It was a legacy, and I had just spent every penny I had in the world, $50,000, not to buy it, but to save it. The money, a decade of careful savings, had vanished in a series of checks written to the county tax office and a structural engineer whose report sat, heavy and foreboding, on the dusty kitchen table. The foundation was sinking, the main roof beam was compromised, and without immediate intervention, the next heavy snow would have turned this sanctuary into a pile of splinters. A profound sense of purpose settled over me, heavy and warm as a woolen blanket. It was the first decision I'd ever made that was entirely, unapologetically mine. It also felt like the quiet before a storm. I knew my family wouldn't understand. To them, value was something you could post on Instagram, something that came with a brand name and high price tag. My great-uncle George was the opposite. He was a man of quiet substance in a family that worshipped loud facades. I could still feel the phantom weight of his hand on my shoulder, could still hear his voice, gravelly and kind, from that long-ago summer. I had been 16, struggling to fix a leaky pipe under the sink while my father, on a rare visit, had watched with an impatient sigh. "Just call a plumber, for God's sake, Leo," he'd said. "Your time is worth more than that." But Uncle George had shooed him away, knelt beside me in the dirt, and guided me through the process. Once we were done, my hands greasy and my shirt damp, he'd wiped his own hands on a rag and looked me square in the eye. "Leo," he'd said, "your father measures a man by the car he drives. I measure a man by the things he can fix with his own two hands. Remember this, your worth isn't in what you buy. It's in what you build and protect." That philosophy had become my compass. It was why I'd stayed in a practical but unglamorous job in logistics, why my savings account grew while my sister Chloe's was a revolving door of debt and indulgence. I was the family's bedrock, the quiet provider, the one they called when things broke, whether it was a car engine or a credit card bill. I thought of Chloe now, and a familiar, weary ache spread through my chest. Just last year, she decided she needed to become a certified mindfulness coach. My mother had called me, her voice a carefully constructed mix of urgency and casual expectation. "Leo, honey, Chloe's found this incredible program in Bali. It's only $5,000. It could change her life. You know, she's so sensitive. She needs this." I knew, from a quick search, that the program was little more than a luxury yoga retreat. But I just received a small bonus, and the pressure was immense. So I transferred the money. 2 weeks into her life-changing journey, her Instagram was filled with pictures of cocktails by the beach, not certificates of achievement. When I gently questioned it, my mother's voice had turned sharp. "Don't be so transactional, Leo. She needed a break. You're the stable one. You should be happy for her." Stable. That was their word for me. It meant predictable, dependable, and ultimately taken for granted. While Chloe chased butterflies, I built a foundation. A foundation they never saw, but one they were always willing to stand on. I pulled out my phone, scrolling past a new photo Chloe had posted, a selfie with a ridiculously expensive handbag, captioned "Treat yourself." Below it, a comment from our mom. "You deserve it all, my beautiful girl." I sighed and looked at the engineer's report again. I made my choice. I had chosen to protect my great-uncle's legacy over funding my sister's next swim. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Mom. "Family dinner tonight, 7 p.m. sharp. Don't be late. We need to talk." The words were simple, but they landed in my gut like a stone. We need to talk. In my family, that was never a conversation. It was a verdict. The storm was no longer coming. It was here. I locked the cabin door, the old metal groaning in protest, and drove towards the life I was about to lose, feeling the weight of the life I had just chosen to save. The pot roast was, as always, too dry, and the air in my parents' dining room was thick with unspoken expectations. My father sat at the head of the table, tapping his wine glass with a signet ring, a gesture he used to command attention. My mother fussed over the gravy, her smile tight and brittle. And Chloe, my sister, was radiant, practically vibrating with an excitement that made the hairs on my arm stand up. She looked like a predator who had cornered her prey. I was the prey. "Leo," my father began, clearing his throat. His voice had the boardroom tone he used when he was about to announce a decision that wasn't up for debate. "We have wonderful news. Chloe has found the most perfect condominium. A real step up for her, a place to build her future." Chloe beamed, clasping her hands together. "It has northern exposure windows, Daddy. The light will be amazing for my content creation." I stayed silent, my fork hovering over a piece of dry meat. I knew what was coming. I could feel the net tightening. "A real man," my father continued, his eyes locking onto mine, "knows how to provide for his family's needs, not just his nostalgic fantasies. Your sister needs this to secure her future. The down payment is $50,000. We told her you'd be happy to provide it from your savings. It's your duty as a son, as a brother, to support this family." The words hit me, each one a calculated blow targeting my sense of honor, my role as the stable one. They weren't asking. They were informing me of my obligation. I placed my fork down, the clink of metal on ceramic unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. "I can't," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "The money's gone." Chloe's smile vanished. "What do you mean it's gone?" "I used it," I said, looking directly at my father. "I used it to pay the back taxes on Uncle George's cabin, and to hire an engineer to keep it from collapsing. I'm saving it." The explosion was instantaneous. Chloe's face crumpled, and she let out a theatrical sob. "You chose a pile of splinters over me, over my future." My mother shot up from her chair, her face a mask of outrage. "The shame, Leo. Wasting that kind of money on that garbage dump, when your own sister needs you. What will people think?" But it was my father's reaction that cut the deepest. He stood slowly, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. His voice was low, shaking with a cold fury that was far more terrifying than yelling. "Foundation? You want to talk about foundation? The foundation of this family is loyalty, and you just spat on it. A man's duty is to his blood." He pointed a trembling finger at me. "You have failed in that duty." He took a step towards me, his face contorted. "Get out of my house." The drive back to the house I still technically lived in my childhood bedroom, was a blur of streetlights and a roaring in my ears. I pulled up to the curb, a strange sense of dread mixing with disbelief. And then I saw it. The front door looked wrong. The old, familiar brass lock had been replaced with a new, gleaming silver deadbolt. My key wouldn't work. My blood ran cold. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking. And there, on the strip of grass between the sidewalk and the curb, next to the city-issued trash and recycling bins, were 3 black garbage bags. My clothes, my books, a few framed photos. Everything I owned in the world, unceremoniously dumped like refuse. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. 5 words that would be seared in my memory forever. "Then go rot in it." I stood there for a long time, the engine of my car ticking quietly as it cooled. I felt nothing and everything all at once. I was in exile, erased. They hadn't just kicked me out, they had tried to delete my existence. I was no longer a son or a brother. I was just trash, left on the curb. Somehow, I drove to the only place I had left. The cabin was dark, cold, and unwelcoming. The first night, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat on the dusty floor, wrapped in an old tarp I found in the shed, and listened to the wind moan through the cracks in the walls. The grief was a physical weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. For a moment, a sliver of doubt, sharp as glass, pierced through my anger. Maybe they were right. Maybe I am a failure. I threw everything away for a ghost, for a memory. I looked at my hands, soft from an office job, and then at the immense, overwhelming mess around me. I was in over my head, alone and abandoned. In a daze, I started rummaging through the things the previous owner had left behind, looking for anything, a blanket, a candle, a reason. My hand closed around the cold metal of an old toolbox. Uncle George's. I pried open the rusted latch. Inside, nestled amongst worn tools, was his old tape measure and a small, folded piece of paper. I unfolded it under the weak beam of my phone's flashlight. His familiar, blocky handwriting filled the page. Measure twice, cut once. Applies to wood and relationships. A small, dry sob escaped my lips. It wasn't a cry of sadness, but of recognition. A spark. He was telling me that precision and care mattered. That some things were worth measuring and saving, and some things needed to be cut away cleanly. The doubt vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve that settled deep in my bones. They had left me to rot. Fine. I would show them what could grow from the rot. I would build. A month later, the cabin was no longer just a shell. It was a battleground. I had patched the worst of the roof leaks, torn out the mildew drywall, and gotten the ancient plumbing to produce a trickle of running water. The work was brutal, but every splinter in my hand, every aching muscle, was a testament to my survival. I was physically and mentally exhausted, but I was on my own 2 feet. That's when she appeared. Chloe pulled up in her luxury SUV. Though I noticed a new, long scratch down the passenger side door, she seemed to be ignoring. She stepped out, her eyes wide and brimming with tears. "Leo," she wailed, rushing towards me. "My landlord is selling the building. I have nowhere to go. I'm so sorry about everything. Please, can I just stay for a week or 2? Just until I find a place." Every instinct screamed no, but seeing her there, looking genuinely distressed for the first time in her life, a foolish, stubborn sliver of brotherly duty flickered within me. "Fine," I grunted. "1 week. The couch is yours." It was a mistake I would regret, and then be grateful for. The first 2 days, she was a model of contrition. Then, the performance began. Her phone and a portable ring light became permanent fixtures. The cabin was no longer my home. It was her content studio. She posted a series of carefully crafted TikTok videos. "Hey guys, just wanted to share something vulnerable," she'd say, her voice trembling slightly, a single tear tracing a path through her perfect makeup. "My brother is going through a really tough time, so I put my own life on hold to be here and help him rebuild. It's hard work, but family is everything. Hashtag family first, hashtag healing journey." The videos were masterpieces of manipulative theater. She'd film herself ineptly hammering a nail, getting a photogenic smudge of dirt on her cheek. She'd pan across the half-finished walls, sighing dramatically. "It's a long road, but we'll get there together." I watched, my stomach churning with a mixture of disgust and disbelief as comments poured in praising her selflessness. "You're an angel. Your brother is so lucky to have you." The final straw came when my old high school friend, Mark, called. We'd kept in touch over the years, and I knew he just made partner at a law firm downtown. "Leo," he said, his voice unusually serious, "I need you to sit down. Are you aware that your sister is running a GoFundMe campaign for you?" "What?" I felt the blood drain from my face. She sent it to my wife. The title is "Help Leo Rebuild His Dignity." She's using a photo of you. "Dude, it looks like she took it while you were asleep. You look terrible." He paused. "Leo, it's raised over $75,000. I was speechless. The air left my lungs. "It gets worse," Mark said quietly. "I had a hunch. The withdrawal account listed on the campaign isn't yours. It's linked directly to her personal savings account. And Leo, I did a public records search. 10 days ago, Chloe Vale put a $75,000 all-cash offer on a condo in the Pearl District. She's using your story to fund her lifestyle." The world tilted on its axis. This wasn't just entitlement. This was calculated predatory fraud. This was theft. "Mark," I said, my voice a hoarse whisper. "What do I do?" "First," he said, his tone shifting from friendly to professional, You don't say a word to her. You are no longer her brother. You're the victim of crime. From this moment on, you are a strategist. You document everything. Every post, every text, every lie. We're going to build a case so airtight she won't be able to breathe. Something inside me shifted. The grief, the hurt, the exhaustion, it all burned away, leaving behind a core of cold, clear purpose. I was no longer a victim. I was a hunter. For the next 2 weeks, I played the part of the grateful, clueless brother. And I documented. I screen-recorded her videos. I saved her texts. And, on Mark's advice, I bought a small, motion-activated camera and hid it on a bookshelf. The footage it captured was more damning than I could have imagined. I watched her on the phone with a friend, laughing. "It's honestly brilliant," she cackled. "My followers are so gullible. The more pathetic I make him look, the more money they throw at me. I should hit 100K by the end of the month. That dump he loves so much is literally buying me a penthouse." Mark's reaction when I sent him the video was simple. "We've got her." Chloe's grand finale was to be a charity celebration, live streamed from a small, rented event space. She invited her top donors, a few local micro-influencers, and, of course, me, the guest of honor. The plan was to surprise me with a giant novelty check on stage. I walked into the event space feeling strangely calm. Chloe was in her element, basking in the adoration of her followers. She finally called me to the stage, her arm wrapped around my shoulders. "And now," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I want to present this gift, a symbol of all of our love and support, to my brave, strong brother Leo." An assistant walked out with a giant check. As Chloe reached for it, a second person, a professionally dressed courier, walked onto the stage from the other side and handed her a thick legal envelope. "Miss Chloe Vale?" the courier asked politely. "You've been served." Chloe's practiced smile froze. Her eyes darted from the envelope to my face. I gave her nothing. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. At that exact moment, every phone in the room buzzed. An anonymous email, sent by Mark's firm to the entire guest list, had just been delivered. Subject: the truth about Chloe's charity. The email contained a single link. It led to a simple web page featuring the hidden camera video of Chloe's phone call, screenshots of her bank transfers to the real estate agency, and a high-resolution image of the text message from our father. "Then go rot in it." The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by a collective gasp as people watched the video on their phones. Chloe's face went from pale to ashen. She looked out at the sea of shocked, accusing faces. And then the final betrayal happened. Our parents were in the front row. My father, a man pathologically obsessed with public perception, saw his family name, his reputation, turn into poison right before his eyes. He scrambled to his feet, snatched a microphone from the podium, and, in a desperate act of self-preservation, shouted, "We are shocked, shocked and appalled by this deception. Chloe has acted alone. This is not how we raised our children. This is a disgrace." He didn't defend me. He didn't apologize. He simply cut his own daughter loose and threw her to the wolves to save himself. I looked at him, this weak, terrified man, and for the first time, I felt nothing but a distant clinical pity. He wasn't a monster. He was just a coward. Chloe let out a strangled cry and fled the stage, her carefully constructed world crumbling into dust behind her. I didn't watch her go. I just stood there, under the stage lights, breathing free. The war was over. The fallout was a digital wildfire. Hashtag Chloe the Con, hashtag GoFundMe fraud, and hashtag Let Him Rot were trending within the hour. Her social media empire evaporated overnight. Her sponsors fled, and the crowdfunding platform, facing a PR nightmare, immediately froze the funds and launched its own investigation, promising to return every dollar to the donors. Chloe was radioactive, but the silence from my family was the most telling. There were no angry calls, no tearful apologies. There was only a single, terse email from my mother 2 days later. "You have destroyed this family. Your father is a laughingstock. You need to make this right. Drop the lawsuit." They still didn't get it. They didn't see the fraud, the betrayal, the cruelty. They only saw the public shame, and they blamed me for holding up the mirror. I didn't reply. I forwarded the email to Mark, who sent back a formal, chillingly polite response on his firm's letterhead stating that all future correspondence must be directed through legal counsel. Then, I blocked their numbers. I blocked their emails. I blocked their social media profiles. I built a digital wall, brick by silent brick. The quiet that followed was the most peaceful sound I had ever heard. The months that followed were a blur of productive solitude. The lawsuit ended in a swift settlement. Chloe, facing potential criminal charges, signed over a significant sum to avoid a public trial. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. I poured that money and my own sweat and blood back into the cabin. I hired a local crew to help with the heavy lifting, men who shared Uncle George's philosophy of honest work. The sinking foundation was secured. A new, sturdy roof replaced the old, leaky one. I installed warm, insulated walls and wide, clear windows that flooded the rooms with light. The cabin was no longer a wreck. It was a home. It was my home. One crisp autumn afternoon, a car I didn't recognize pulled into the driveway. It was my great-aunt Carol, Uncle George's sister. I hadn't seen her in years. She was a quiet woman who had always existed on the fringes of our family's loud drama. She'd heard what had happened and had sent me a care package a few months prior. A warm blanket, non-perishable food, and a short, handwritten note that I kept pinned to the wall. Your father was always jealous of George's happiness, the note read. Don't let his bitterness define you. Now, she stood on my new porch, a small, framed photo in her hands. He would be so proud of you, Leo, she said, her voice thick with emotion. She handed me the frame. It was a picture of me as a boy, maybe 7 or 8, standing proudly next to Uncle George in front of the half-built fireplace, both of us covered in soot. He always said you had the soul of a builder, she continued. You just needed to find the right thing to build. We spent the afternoon drinking coffee and talking, and for the first time, I felt a connection to a family that wasn't transactional or conditional. It was a family built on shared values and quiet respect. That evening, after she left, I was sitting by the fire pit, watching the stars appear in the clear mountain sky. My friends, the construction crew, and Mark had just left after a small barbecue to celebrate the house being finished. The air was filled with the scent of wood smoke and the lingering sound of their easy laughter. I checked the mailbox on my way back inside. Tucked between some junk mail was a handwritten letter with my mother's elegant, familiar script. My heart didn't pound. My hands didn't shake. I simply opened it. It was a long, rambling monologue of self-pity and blame. It talked about how their friend was shunning them, how Chloe was broken, how I had been selfish and cruel. It ended with the lines I knew were coming. After all this, your father and I have had to sell the house. We have nowhere else to go. Surely, in that big cabin you cared so much about, you have room for us. I read the words, and I felt nothing. The old hooks, the guilt, the sense of obligation, they had no purchase on me anymore. I looked from the letter to the warm, inviting lights of the home I had built. I thought of my friends, of Aunt Carol, of Uncle George. Slowly, deliberately, I walked back to the fire pit. The embers were still glowing hot. I folded the letter, held it for a second, and then dropped it onto the coals. I watched as the edges curled, the ink turned brown, and my mother's signature vanished into a wisp of gray ash. I wasn't burning a bridge. I was finally letting go of the rope that had been dragging me under my whole life. My father had demanded I provide for a future built on facades. My great-uncle had taught me to build a present based on integrity. Finally, I had chosen. I was a builder, not an ATM. This home wasn't built with their approval or my sister's fraudulent charity. It was built with my own 2 hands, on a foundation no one could ever take from me again: self-respect. They had wanted a key to my house, but I had finally, permanently, changed the locks on my life. Have you ever had to choose yourself over the family you were born into? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below.